Pacer Nation, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode here of your go-to Pacers podcast. And today is a day. It is Game 7 of the NBA Finals, and we are ecstatic about that. We've been so excited about it. We've been talking about everything not NBA Game 7 for the past hour and 20 minutes before we recorded this podcast. So we did talk a little bit about it, but mostly non-Pacers, non-Thunder stuff. But we've saved all that good stuff for this podcast. And I've got David, Lincoln, and Carson back, the guys from the group chat, to talk about it all. But David, since we were talking about some non-basketball stuff before we came on, you were talking about Mario Kart, and you were talking about Ezra, your son, asking you if you're going to play it and getting really into it. I'm curious, what comparison can you make between this Pacers run and Mario Kart?
So the new game, Mario Kart World, right? The biggest selling point to this game is that you can not just play races, but you're like in this gigantic map of world that you can just go explore, and the whole world's your oyster. And that is kind of like the Indiana Pacers and the fact that we're not just a guy. You don't just go to the game to watch the MVP. You go to the game to see all of it, to see eight players average 10 or more points. I don't even remember who it was I saw on ESPN today said he picked the Pacers to win Game 7 because he said the Thunder have two guys. It's like the old Mario Kart. You do Grand Prix. And you might, do some online play. I don't even know. You might just do a single race. It's just, that's fine. It's cool. But, it's nice to have a couple good players. But we got eight. You can go and do these eight coin challenges. You can go race these random things and go fly up in the air. You can go in the water. You can go all kinds of. You can do whatever you want, and that's the Pacers right now. We can do any of these. You want to see some threes? We got threes. You want to see some paint work? Obi Toppin in the paint. What is this? We got all this stuff. Whatever you like in basketball, we got it. Come see it.
I love it. I can't really elaborate much because I'm not a person that plays Mario Kart. I wish I did. I'm just very focused on the podcast. I don't have any time for anything else. So, Lincoln, just to piggyback off that, I do know there are some great Mario characters. If you could at least give me two characters to compare to players in this series, that would
Okay.
be a fun exercise. And then Carson, if he leaves any meat on the bone, you can follow up.
Okay.
Okay, so off the dome, we are going Luigi is Lou Dort because Luigi's Mansion 3, there's literally like a mechanic where Luigi flops around. So that is number one with a bullet. No debating that. And then for number two, I will go, and obviously I'm not saying that Lou Dort is Tyrese's brother, but I will go Mario for Tyrese because he's the main character. And you may be there for all the other characters. You're playing Mario Kart World for the cow or for the dolphin. But at the end of the day, there's one guy that gets the whole thing going, and we're not here without him. So, Pascal may win Finals MVP, but at the end of the day, he's the engine. He's the reason this whole thing exists. So there we go.
Trying to think. This is a rather
You didn't have this in
advanced
your notes?
analogy. No, I do, I
No.
do, I do have one though. I did. Luckily, I thought of one, and I don't. I think I'm glad I had enough time while Lincoln was talking to think of one because I wouldn't have been able to do it on the spot. So props to David and Lincoln. No, my one though is I'm gonna say so in this Mario Kart game you can play as Shy Guy for the first time. So I'm gonna compare the Shy Guy to Shay. So you got the Shay Guy. So Shy Guy's whole thing is that he doesn't have expressions. He just goes out there. He never, whether he's winning or losing in Mario Kart, no reaction. And so because of that, like he kind of looks cool, but like outside of that, he doesn't ride too high, doesn't get too low, and because of that, he doesn't do all the fun stuff that you see. Doesn't look like he's having as much fun as Mario's having out there. I mean, Mario and DK are up there doing all these fun tricks and flips and stuff, and Shay Guy's out there just acting like he doesn't even want to be there. So that's my comp.
All right, everybody. Well, Setting the Pace is not sponsored by Mario Kart. We are sponsored by the great folks over at Chat BCC. And if you have not already downloaded the app, please do so by clicking the link in the description. Now, let's dive into more specific Pacers basketball talk as we conclude the NBA season with one of the greatest things ever, Game 7 in the NBA Finals. David, You're the elder statesman here. We always talk about that. I got to bring it up every time because you're the old guy, right?
I appreciate it.
You talked about how emotional you were once they made it to the finals. The fact that they could potentially win this, and you will be in Gainbridge Fieldhouse watching this with a ton of people. How much differently are you going to react? Number one, in front of different people, and number two, how much more emotional are you going to be?
It's gonna be crazy. I know it's gonna be crazy. Either way, I think I'm already preparing for like I already have, honestly. When we were up by 30, game six, I was like, you know what? It doesn't really matter what happens. I mean, obviously, I'm gonna be upset if we don't win in terms of like what I want to have happen as a fan and as a someone that's been a fan since I was a little kid. Probably around 30 years that I've been actively interested and a fan of the Pacers. I want to win so bad. I was teared up when we made it to the finals. I teared up when we won game six. Not when we won, but like when it was pretty clear we were gonna win. I was in the third quarter. I was tearing up a little bit there. Just like having the shot of this being a reality is something that if you've been a Pacers fan for any time at all, you know this is like the wildest dream kind of thing. Like
Taylor Swift reference. Thank you.
yeah, exactly. That was definitely on purpose. The, but like we've had, in a lot of fan bases have had their fair share of doom and gloom and had their fair share of problems. So I don't want to be like, oh, we deserve this more than anybody else. That's lame. But the point is, if you've been a Pacers fan for very long, you've seen ups and downs, and even the ups, you've never ever been like this team this year can win a championship. Last year, it felt like we were maybe even 2 rounds ahead of schedule, let alone just generally ahead of schedule. And this year, I was like, you know what? If we lose to the Cavs, that'll be a great season. That'll be a good run. This is an all-time great regular season Cavs team. And maybe we can pull off an upset. Who knows? We'll see. And I never thought we were gonna get to the finals. Never thought we were gonna have a shot to win the finals. Even once we got to it, I was like, you know what? I could see the Pacers pushing it to 6 or 7. But man, I am so happy that I was able to get tickets to go to the watch party, just to be with a bunch of fans. You know, whatever happens, I know those fans are going to be there to support the team. They're gonna be happy to have this moment, and it's going to be emotional either way. If they win, it's going to be insane in that place.
Lincoln, you said that you were going to drive to Indianapolis for the parade. Maybe you're flying. I don't know. I'm assuming you're driving, but
I'm
we'll
driving.
just, yeah, Mario Kart style, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But you said you will drive to Indianapolis for the parade if the Pacers do win this. So I've seen you cry with LeBron James when you were younger. What kind of emotion are you going to feel when if the Pacers win this?
Yeah, I mean, it is funny. I mean, I was thinking back on basically my basketball history because the last game seven in the finals was 9 years ago. I had just graduated high school, and at that point, my favorite player was LeBron. I was rooting for him to really beat those Warriors. I was a mess that whole game seven. I was so excited for it, like, but nervous at the same time. But I mean, I've fallen in love with the Pacers, specifically in college when I had those like season tickets, and I've never been as invested in a team as I've been these last 2 years. I mean, watching like 75 regular season games, like listening to pods every day, like just so in love with these guys. And I mean, yeah, like I mentioned it, but like Lowe did kind of his like famous like stake setting, like I'm gonna do like a monologue about like what this would mean. And I was literally on a walk yesterday listening to it and like starting to tear up. And it was just like the end of the day, like we're gonna remember for good or ill so many moments from tomorrow's game. And there are going to be moments we agonize over for the next 20 years, or moments that like, like the block or the shot or the stop that Kevin Love got on Curry, like game seven in the finals is special. And I think it's gonna be impossible, especially if we lose, not to take this for granted, but like just being here is unbelievable. And I mean, yeah, I my journey over this series was game one, going into game one. I think that this is going to be more competitive than like the national media is painting, but I do think the Thunder are probably going to win the series. And then slowly, leading to the heartbreak with us up 10 late in game four. And then now, like, I mean, I'm done hedging. Like, I think we're winning tomorrow.
Let's go.
I think it's going to be an agonizing four quarters where we're stressed the entire time, but I think we do it. I really do. And I think we, punch our ticket to basketball immortality tomorrow. And I think this is something that literally we think about for the rest of our lives was this playoff run and this team and how special they were, how they always had the answer. And I mean, I'm getting emotional thinking about it now. But yeah, I mean, tomorrow I'm hoping that nobody other than my wife can see me when the final buzzer rings because it's going to be a moment.
I'm not gonna lie, I got goosebumps when you were saying that. Not gonna lie. David's reaction was incredible. Carson smiling. I mean, I'm just like, could it really happen? Like, we're almost here. It's crazy. We are like, I don't know how many hours away. Whenever you're listening to this, we are away from it, but we are that close to it happening. But Carson, what will this moment be for you?
Yeah, I think for me it'll be just like pure euphoria of the ups and downs of this season. I mean, that's kind of the deal with this team is like whenever they lose, it's like, oh, we've never been down so bad, and then they win and it's we are so back, baby. And it's just a roller coaster that is it's agonizing to ride, but I also don't think I would have it any other way because like I mean, even sure like you want to win championships if but it's something different when uh when it's with a group like this that just you can tell it and you can feel it in the way that they play the game and the joy that they play with. And really for me as a fan, this season has had a lot of ups and downs. Alex has alluded to it before, but I'm a huge Luka fan, and so like going from that Charlotte loss for this Pacers team and then like a month or two later, one of my favorite players in the NBA on it. He like finally he came into the league, was immediately so good, didn't weren't really able to properly build a contender around him, and then finally got a contender around him, and it's boom, we're going to trade him immediately after that. And so that really like sucked to watch happen. Um, and then like the Pacers at that time, that was February, like I think they're about a month apart, maybe between those. So like, and sure, the Pacers kind of picked up the record in 2025, but it really wasn't like we weren't deep enough into this like, oh, here's the Pacers 2025 record to like tell that we'd really turn the season around. And so just all the ups and the downs of this season, it really, I think, is really maybe metaphorical of like what this franchise has been over the past however many decades. There's been like coming close so many times, and it just really feels like this year with this team that this is the team of destiny. I mean, like we've seen these game winners, we've seen like everybody count us out, and so like when you watch the underdog movies and you watch Hoosiers and whatever other basketball sports movies you want, like this is that narrative. And we don't have all the like we don't spend a lot of money on players historically. We're not in the tax. We don't have all these assets. We're not I guess maybe we touch Lake Michigan, so we have a couple 100 miles of beach, but like we are not South Beach. We are not like nobody's going to Indianapolis so that they can get be in the music industry or to be in the movie industry or to live with these big name people next door. And so it's just like it you can tell how much it really means to the fans. And I really think like it is just as special for the fans as it is the players in a way, and even players past too. I mean, like you think about Reggie, like seeing that play from Game 6 of Tyrese get that steal, and something about like him getting that ball in front of Reggie and then giving that pass, like it just feels like this season has been so unforgettable in no pun intended with the song with the Nat King Cole song that they've been playing. I literally just thought about that. I had to stop dead in my tracks. I didn't do that intentionally. But literally the season has been so unforgettable. And so
Unforgettable.
yeah, that's funny. And so, but all that being said, like even like win or lose, I'm with Lincoln. I think we win, but like win or lose, this is not anything that I will ever take for granted as a sports fan. And it's the type of thing that you see in movies that really just doesn't happen in real life. And like, and it's one thing to be like, oh, here's this underdog story from the Super Bowl in this random year in the 80s or the NBA Finals in 1979 was this matchup and nobody saw this coming. And there was, but like a lot of times those Cinderella stories don't end up with a win. So it'd be just so special to actually cap this off in the state of Indiana with these fans, with these players, past and present.
Going from Nat King Cole, we're going to David Cole on our next topic. And I just want to say that the NBA put out today that the average margin of victory for game sevens is I think a 7 point differential. So with it always kind of being one of those things where games are tight, what are you looking to see from the Pacers to be on the, positive end of that tight game?
The biggest thing I'm looking at, so if you'd asked me a few days ago, maybe before Game 6 for sure, I would have said I would have been talking about pace. I've been talking about turnovers. I think all that's important, and I still think that's definitely one of the top things we need to be worried about. To me, the number one thing is defense. The whole series, I've been probably more guilty of this than other people on average, I feel like, but I've been like, you know what, Tyrese hasn't had his big game yet, Miles hasn't had his big game yet, so and so hasn't done this, they haven't done this. And I think at some point we have to realize that this Thunder defense is just good enough that those things that we stereotypically have had happen to this playoff run are not going to happen. The series is what it is. And we're not going to get a Tyrese. I mean, maybe we will, but we're not going to get a Tyrese Halliburton 30 and 12 game. We might get a 20 and 10 game, but we're not going to get like a big. We're not going to get a Tyrese 18-point quarter like it was an 18 that he had against the Knicks in game 6, something like that. He had a second quarter where he went off. Well, I don't think we're going to get those. And if we do, I think we just win, like more handily than people will even believe. But I don't think we are. And so I think like if you look at a lot of the keys to why we've won these games, it has been our defense and our defense leading into and feeding into everything else. Because to me, what I've realized, and I did not realize, as someone who's watched a ton of games this year, I didn't watch all 82, but I feel like I was pretty close. I just did not realize this. I think our defense feeds into our pace and feeds into our offense. It helps with the turnover differential because we're creating turnovers and then getting easy baskets and fast break positions and, that flow, and it creates that frenzy that we thrive in and most other teams cannot thrive in. The Thunder generally can, but it's when they're creating it, not when it's happening to them. And I just think that our defense has been what has set the tone in not even just the physicality. That's a part of it, sure. But I think a lot of it is, Rick has a game plan for XYZ things, and we go out and execute them. We can get into the nitty gritty if we want, but there's a lot of videos about, oh, Miles was putting his hand in this position on the switches or on the screens, or hey, they were screening here. They were like defending the screens here instead of defending it here. It's been the defense, and so that is honestly the thing that I'm like, if we can play really good defense, I think the other things will work themselves out. So that's what I'm going to be watching for in Cambridge for the watch party, is like, how are we defending the team as a whole, the Thunder as a whole, not just Shea and obviously Shea and J-Dub are big parts of that, but really, how are we defending everybody?
Lincoln, aside from defense, I mean, you can get maybe into more of a specific matchup if you want to, but
Mhm.
to answer that question I asked David, I don't want to just keep going through the same points and kind of piggybacking off everybody because we'll be here till 2 o'clock in the morning if we do that. I know how we are. So, just wanted to get your thoughts on maybe something else specifically that you're maybe wanting to see that could help the Pacers be on that positive side of a average of 7 point differential.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately this team has shown, up 10, down 10, they're really good at playing their game. And so I think that's what has, I think, surprised people in these close game situations is that they just don't stop. So the other team lets their foot off the gas a little bit and it just opens the door a little bit. And to me, what I think would be like pretty much the differentiator in game seven is I don't think we're going to come into it as tight as a young team going into a game seven normally would. And I think we showed that last year. I think obviously the stage is so much bigger now, but a game seven in the Garden for a team that had not been to the playoffs before is about as big of a stage as you can have. And obviously there's a lot of different circumstances there, but I think we still, and David talked about this. I feel like I've said this, and I tend to lean towards your ideology on this, but we haven't had some of these quarters where it's just like, oh, we just put up 45 and we go 7 of 12 from 3 or something like that. And I do think there's a chance that, like, if I were to, my dream script for this game is basically they come out, they punch us in the mouth, a little bit like game 6. The crowd's behind them. Maybe it's an 8 point game pretty early, but I think we weather that. And I think this team is not going to be ready for the comeback from that. I think it's going to be a little similar to game six where they're going to try and knock us out early. And as long as we can respond to that, I think they're going to start playing tight. Their role guys are going to start seeing, every single possible storyline coming out of this game. And I mean, I think ultimately it's going to be, the strength in numbers. I think our five, six, seven, eight, nine guys are going to play better than theirs. And I think that's going to end up being the difference. I think, and Miles isn't necessarily the fifth guy, but, him or Chet could finally have the game where they start making some shots. Like Miles hits three threes tomorrow, like David said, like, I think we just win. Like he has, like, there's so many little things like that where it's like, yeah, they've taken us out of our game. But if we're able to get back into our game, even for just a quarter, there's a lot of stuff like that that can kind of break loose and has a lot of knock-on effects. And I mean, again, let me talk about the 2016 Game 7. Juan Shumpert had a 4-point play on a three, and they won by 4. Like, Game 7's weird things happen. And I honestly just feel like going into it, we have mastered that. And I think if weird things happen, it will favor us. Like, and I know that seems completely illogical because I'm talking about small weird things, and they should favor. It's hard to say that they'll favor you, but this Pacers team has made me just feel that way. I really do think we're going to get in. They're going to throw the ball up, and this team is going to have the toughness, the togetherness, and the leadership to really just not let the moment be too big for them. And I don't think the Thunder are going to have that. That's ultimately what I think the difference will be.
I want to come back to you real quick because you brought up Amon Shumpert. He's been doing a lot of post game stuff here
Yeah.
for the Hoop Collective. Do you think it's a good sign that he's been on this series, knowing that he was a part of that 2016 Cavs team?
Yeah, I mean, he knows what it's like when you're up against a huge favorite too. And so like there's a lot of videos that have come out since of like, I think leadership was the biggest reason they won that series. And there's videos after game 6 where LeBron literally says like they are, I'll paraphrase, messed up mentally. We completely have them mentally. And I'm not here to say that like the Pacers have the Thunder completely, they're running and hiding after that game 6 win. Like, we took care of home court. But I think that is kind of, I think Amon probably can recognize that. Like he's talked about it a little bit. Like this team, they don't quit. And the hardest thing to do in the NBA is to like make a team quit. And we just don't. So I really do think, yeah, I don't know. It's been cool hearing his perspective though, for sure. Because that
Yeah,
is now that we're now into the next game 7. It's crazy. It's been almost a decade.
I know. I know. It's crazy. And I mean, Amon Shumpert's been actually surprising to me on that Hoop Collective with some of his basketball takes. Obviously, just a different guy. I talked to him out in the streets, and he was very like, "Don't bother me. I'm Amon Shumpert." And I'm like, "Okay, dude, like, you're Amon Shumpert, like it's not that big of a deal." I just said, "Hey, I'm not trying to be rude or anything." But anyway, Carson, in terms of what the Pacers can do that maybe we haven't touched on already, what are some things you're looking at to try to make where you can see maybe they could win this series?
Yeah, I think this kind of gets back into what David was talking about. It'll come down to our defense, down to the defense, and what cards does Rick and the coaching staff still have in their back pocket? What kind of looks are they going to throw at Shea? I mean, it's been talked about. I don't want to say to death, but it's going to be like this might be one of those games where it's like with that OKC crowd, it's like you're more okay. I mean, OKC in general, you might be better off, but especially when you are walk into their arena, like the thing that you cannot do is let Caruso, Dort, Isaiah Joe, you cannot let those guys get hot and be the reason they win games. And so in a game like this, it's like maybe you do like let Shea, maybe not let Shea, but obviously make it as hard as possible on him, but force him to play that hero ball early in the game. And then late game, like Lincoln was talking about, like, is Isaiah Joe going to be up to the challenge? Is Lou Dort, are these other guys going to be up to the challenge of making those Amon Shumpert type plays? Maybe they will be, maybe they won't. But if they haven't touched the ball all game and they're cold, that's part of one of the downsides of playing that more heliocentric style offense that they have with Shea, especially if Shea's just kind of getting to the rim and he's shooting 50% and Andrew's playing really good defense. And yeah, we might have some rotations. We might throw a couple double coverages at him, depending on like where he's at on the floor and depending on the quarter, just to mix up the looks. But I think that really it'll come down to that, and I have full confidence in Rick and the coaching staff because I mean, we saw, um, was it Dustin Dobrik's? I don't. Apologies if I didn't pronounce his.
Dopirak.
Okay, thank you. I didn't want to mispronounce his name, but he had that tweet where he asked, I believe, Mark Dagnall about like what's been your takeaway from being on the other side of the chessboard against Rick, and he said it's been very humbling. And so like that is just like really tells you the kind of respect that Rick has. And obviously we've seen. I felt like he's been easily the best coach in these playoffs. And that comes from somebody who's been critical of Rick throughout the regular season, but I felt like in these playoffs, he has been at his best, maybe more so than any. Actually, I would say he's been at his best more so than any player on our team has been at their best. And I think he deserves so much of the credit for why we're at where we are. And if we win, he deserves so much credit, even compared to like other coaches in NBA history. Like
Yeah.
he has really solidified himself with this playoff run, win or lose, as an all-time great coach. And so I have a hard time believing that he is just going to come into this game seven without any new things to throw at OKC. And so I think that will be one of the big things to keep an eye on for this game.
Yeah, like the shirt says, the plot rickens. So it's going to be fun to see what happens. But we spent a lot of time talking about defense there. I'm curious, David, your thoughts on the Pacers' offense. Maybe what you're hoping to see them do at the beginning of the game. I know Lincoln talked about he can kind of envision us getting down early but coming back. But how do you think the Pacers kind of weather that storm or get things going offensively for them? And how would you like to see them attack that?
What I want to see is it's easy to it's probably maybe even too easy to say more of what they did in Game 6, but like that's the game where we busted it wide open and we didn't even shoot super incredibly well. We shot well, but not like we shot like a little bit above average, and I mean league average, not like our average. I'm not even sure what our average was for the season, but what I mean when I say that is they were very intentional about trying to get Tyrese the ball in different scenarios, not just him bringing the ball up. It was they did
Mhm.
some of that, but they let there was some Pascal bringing the ball up, a lot of Andrew bringing the ball up, and it was let's get Tyrese the ball in this scenario and that scenario and let him go to work and see if. And I think and I don't have any. I haven't listened to the media from today. I plan to, but I have not yet. I don't know if that was addressed and that was like a plan to let him test out his calf and like, hey, go feel it out and see how, we'll give you this look, give you that look and see how you feel. But I think those kind of things get him comfortable. And especially with the calf injury, I have no idea if there's been any further like, oh yeah, he's doing great. He seemed like he was not 100%, but also was much better than I anticipated him being, to be honest, based off what you saw in Game 5. And the fact that he was icing it all the time, or whatever pad it was. I don't know if it was ice or if it was hot, but whatever he had on it, he was using that like every time out, basically. Was like good for him. He played really well. So, but my point is, it not only gets him comfortable in the game. And I think that like we've seen the stats of like if he misses his first shot versus making his first shot. And I don't think that's all there is to it. I think it's a mentality thing and a comfortability and getting him settled into the game flow. For one, but for two, it also impacts the defense because even if you miss a couple of shots that they know you, if they know you're capable of hitting because of your history, they have to respect it if you're actively going for those shots in the game. Whereas in some games we've seen Tyrese, and I'm not trying to blame just purely Tyrese for it. There's a whole conversation we can have about how Tyrese is discussed in the media and whatever else, and our own personal feelings on his play. But there's been games where he's been less effective, where he's more isolated, and so those have been proven not to work right for us as
Hmm.
a team. And a big part of that is that the opposing defense, can just like kind of like write him off. And that's not where we're at our best. So I want them to continue to get him looks, but I think the other thing they should also add into that is not just vary up the looks we're getting, the places we're getting the ball to Tyrese and how we're getting the ball to Tyrese, but also combine it with what we did a lot starting in Game 3, which is get Pascal the ball early and often. And so I think that you like take. I don't think obviously you don't do like every odd possession is Tyrese's turn, and every even possession is Pascal's turn. But I just think you just vary that up, and whether it's hey maybe Pascal is the person we get the ball to first, and if he has a good look, he takes it. If not, you get the ball to Tyrese and let him probe around a little bit. And yeah, just getting the ball in those two guys' hands, those are our guys. Like, yeah, we are a committee, and we're a team that can have 8 guys that average 10 points in the playoffs. But Pascal and Tyrese are the two that are consistently going to get us the most points, generally speaking, and are the ones that have the ability to really bust a game open. In terms of consistency, like Aaron Nesmith has done it before, right? Obi Toppin's done it before. TJ McConnell's done it before. Andrew Nimhard did it against the Cavs, right? But consistently, it's usually Pascal and Tyrese. So I think, especially in a game 6 where everyone's nerves are going to be tight, everyone's going to be like, "Oh my gosh, this is like the biggest thing ever for us in this arena." Getting them comfortable, I think, is going to be super important offensively.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off that because I was talking with Facci before we came on here to record this, and we were talking about like what the Pacers need to do to get going offensively early on, and I said they got to go to Siakam early. And I think the reason why you go to Siakam early is because he's been in those moments before. He's been in a closeout game in the NBA Finals, and he was very good in that game as well. Facci read the stats. I forget what they are, but I mean, he had an incredible, I think it was game 6 against the Warriors. So Pascal just relying on your veteran that's kind of got you here. I know that Ty's the guy, right? Like we talked about earlier, Lincoln called him the Mario of the group. But Pascal is still more than likely going to win Finals MVP if the Pacers win this because he's been so
Yeah.
good on both ends of the floor. I just think that if you get Pascal the ball early and he can see a couple shots go in, I think that makes OKC tighten up a little bit more.
Mhm.
And we'll see what they do. I want to ask you about this, Lincoln, here in terms of what you expect the starting lineup to be for OKC. But if they do go small and you put Jalen Williams on him and he's able to get going on Jalen Williams or at least get him into foul trouble, that could really mess up the psyche of his mind for this game 7, where he already said, win or lose, it's a great part to be of this history. So it's kind of like Jalen Williams, a very young player, very talented player, did not have a great game. 6 was a minus 40 in that game as well. So just curious your thoughts, though, Lincoln, on going to Pascal, I guess, early kind of replying to what I said, and then thoughts on maybe if they do have a lineup change and go back to maybe Casey Wallace. They stay with Hartenstein or do they go to Caruso?
Yeah, I don't know. I think them starting Caruso to start the second half in game 6 may be indicative of what they might do to start game 7. I think obviously you're not holding anything back. If they feel like that's their best lineup, they may just go to it immediately. If they do, I trust Pascal in a big game, even being guarded by Caruso. So like I feel good about that strategy as well. But yeah, I mean, when it's funny when people I know that Pascal was negotiating through the media a little bit when he was being in the trade saga, but he basically was like, Miles Turner is one of the players I want to be with, and the Pacers are one of the teams, basically. And he said it, a little veiled because he didn't want to like get fined for tampering or whatever. But and it is crazy. You watch him on this team now, and you're like, oh yeah, he is the perfect fit. And I think it took around a year or so for his transition game to get unlocked. And so, like, I think in the half court, we should go to him early, see if he can knock down a couple jumpers. But the number one thing is like we have to feed him in transition because, especially when Hartenstein's out there, he just does not have a chance. Like, there was a couple plays in game 6 where Pascal was basically just like, I'm going to go at you and by you, and you're going to have to foul me. And, maybe it won't get called, but like I'm putting the pressure at that point on the refs to make the decision. And yeah, I mean, I think the end of the day, you do lean on your veterans a little bit more in these big games. And Pascal, he's the only guy that's been here. And I just think he's got another special game for us, just like he did in game 6. The numbers weren't unbelievable, but when we needed a big play, he was there. And, I think I've heard some people say, calling him like a Draymond level defender was like a little much or whatever. But at the end of the day, like when you watch him in these moments, like he is everywhere. He is filling him and Nimhard. The load that they're carrying are unbelievable. They are covering up for everybody else's deficiencies
Yeah.
and still having to be their own, defender, guard their yard, but they are doing everything. And so I think at the end of the day, like Pascal's about to show us, like he is one of the most well-conditioned players because the load he's going to have to carry on both ends is going to be huge. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think going to him early, and honestly, I think even it was either Lowe or Caitlin Cooper, I forget, but they were talking about that. Like there is a little meat left on the bone with the Tyrese Pascal pick and roll. We have not really gone to that much, and that might be, to Carson's point, one of the things that Rick and the coaching staff is kind of holding back a little bit. So, like you said, like those are our guys. Just putting them in the action, and just seeing what happens. Like I could see us going to that a lot more heavily in Game 7.
I'm glad you bring that up about Carlisle too, and I know Carson brought it up earlier, but like I've heard multiple different podcasts say like I feel like Rick still has an ace up his sleeve, like he's still got things he's holding on to, and I'm like it's kind of crazy that they hold on to stuff till like Game 7, but like then Rick in his pregame stuff tonight, or excuse me, his post practice stuff, he was just like. Yeah, he's like, I kind of expected it to go seven. He's just so funny, man. Like, he's just prepared for everything. This guy is a psycho. He's like a wizard. But I
Yeah.
don't want to talk about Carlisle right now because I do want to talk about the veteran part that you brought up here, Lincoln. And while this guy has never been in this spot specifically, the last two games I feel like he has looked completely unfazed and has put OKC, in a lot of bad spots. And I think that's the great white hope, TJ McConnell. So Carson, talk to me about what you've seen from TJ in the last two games and what you're kind of maybe expecting OKC to do potentially differently in Game 7, because I feel like he has had such an impact on this series. Even in that loss, the fact that he was able to bring them back and gave them so much more confidence. You can't take away what he's done this series.
Yeah, I think with him, he's been a lot better at choosing his spots, in his moments more specifically, because I think that is kind of the thing with TJ is that there's times where the game is going bad and he chooses to do something, and it's like I appreciate the life and the hope that you are trying to inject into this game, but that was not the possession to do it. That was the possession to go to Pascal. And especially because Pascal runs a lot of lineups with those, is out there a lot with the bench group. And so when he does that, that's why it can feel so bad. And so these past couple games and the games where he's been really good with his defense and getting steals, and then not even necessarily needing to be the guy to finish those plays. And so I think that is key for him. And then as far as OKC, the types of adjustments that they make, I think they might get to a point in, and I probably should know this, but if I'm trying to think in my mind, like I I'm I don't really remember who they typically have match up with TJ. But I wonder if they maybe go a route of not letting him get such easy paint touches, which is hard with a guy like TJ. But I almost wonder if and this sounds counterintuitive, and I'm not saying guard TJ 35 feet from the basket by any means, because there's not ever really a reason to do that. But part of, I think, the trap that some defenses fall into with TJ is that they sag off so much because they're fine with him shooting. But what they don't account for is that TJ is quick and he is strong and he is feisty and he's going to scrap. So if you get a guy like him who's willing to do the dirty work and he gets a head of speed driving at you from the 3-point line into the paint, you like you're going to be driven back a little bit. He's got a paint touch. There's been times where he's been the best player on our team, maybe even this whole series. He's been the best player on our team at getting the ball into the paint.
Hmm.
And so at least from the perimeter as a guard. And so I wonder if you're OKC, maybe you maybe guard him, pick him up at the mid range. As opposed, so he doesn't have as much time to get that full head of speed, and you can still force him out of the paint, not let him get that full head of speed. Or maybe they throw some more zone in there. Say we're really killing him, and if TJ's on the floor, there might be a time. I've been shocked that we have not seen in the playoffs. Hey, we're just not going to let you play TJ McConnell, your backup point guard, because he can't shoot, and we're just going to not guard him. And we've seen that. We've seen that before. And so if they get to a point where they say, you know what, we're going to play 5-on-4. Unless TJ's cramming it down our throats in the paint, we're not even going to worry about him. So I think there's a couple things that they might look to do there, but at that point, I like what that does for us because that forces them to change to anything that we're doing. And if they are having a hard time, like if the Oklahoma City Thunder with their personnel are having to adjust because of TJ McConnell. Like they're having to adjust their historically great defense because of Timothy John Jr. That is a great sign for us.
By the way, shout out to his dad on that NBA TV post
So
game
good.
interview. I loved it. I thought his dad was awesome, and then talking about his sister too, like just really cool. Like he's like, how cool is it to have your daughter in the WNBA and your son in the NBA Finals going to a Game 7? I'm like, it's pretty surreal. I can't imagine how that would feel as a dad, especially a basketball coach. But Yeah, I think you bring up some good points there, and I wanted to say like you brought up like maybe they pick him up like at the free throw line or the mid range. I feel like they've been doing that, and I feel like that's been their problem. I feel like maybe they need to get out and pressure him more. Maybe put like a Case and Wallace on him like the entirety of the game, or that he's out there. Just say stay with him no matter what. Because I mean, Case and Wallace is a really good on ball defender, and I think
Yeah.
that that could be a little bit more problematic for TJ than giving him that head of steam. Because I shared a video yesterday on Twitter. Someone actually sent it to me and said, "Hey, can you share this? I spent a lot of time working on it." And I was like, "Yeah, no problem." And it was really good because they were talking about how TJ basically reads angles of where the defender is going to be at, and it's like, oh, you're leaning this way, I'm going to go there and then spin around real quick and do this, and like he's just been unbelievable the last two games, and like every bad feeling I've ever had about him, I feel like I just kind of like washed it away because I'm like the Great White Hope. He just constantly makes doubters believers again. It's just one of those things where if he's got the ball in his hands, good things have happened so far in this series for the most part. There's been a few rough moments in game three and game four, I feel like, but since then, I feel like he's played better. But David, I want to transition now to X factors for this game tonight. Who do you think is the biggest X factor for the Pacers?
Oof, man, I think there's some like obvious names, and I think that's probably where I would end up going. If you're asking me biggest X factor, I think I would probably go Obi Toppin. Granted, it seems recently is less of an X factor and more of a given. Like he's just been so good, but I don't think that it is. I think that like part of that is that we've just had a lot of success. Like outside of Game 5, which was like you and Fachi talked about it a bunch. Just a really tough game to win, basically a must win for OKC uh in at home. Whereas for us it wasn't. And so difficult game there, but outside of that, you've just seen like a lot of our six we had a lot of success recently, and he's also been very good recently. And I just think like when you can come in, the ABC crew talked about it. Every game, the team that's won the bench points battle has won the game in the series. And a big part of that is Obi Toppin. Like, yeah, TJ McConnell is creating a lot of that offense sometimes, with steals or with him getting the paint touches, as Carson was talking about, but he's not scoring a ton. And so if Obi Toppin's shot's not falling, it doesn't really matter if TJ can get to the paint and find the open guy, because generally I feel like we talked about it a lot where we don't put in just TJ, we put in TJ and Obi and several bench players all at one time. We talked that maybe into the ground, but that's why if he made me pick one person, I'm probably gonna go not sorry, not TJ, probably gonna go Obi, just because he's been consistent. And I think that we've mentioned it before. Like, I don't know. I don't remember if I mentioned it in our group message or if I mentioned it in chat BCC. But like he's played himself into that contract very nicely, um, and like it was like there's I think it was a bond temps or McMahon. One of them was very much like, oh, it's a huge overpay
Oh,
last
bond
off
temps
season.
every day.
Yeah, last off season, and like I was like, well, maybe it will be. I don't know. We'll see. And then when he's on the trade block, it was like maybe it wasn't overpay, and now it's like no, that's like he's for sure in that contract. And I think if he's
Yeah.
hitting his threes in getting out in fast breaks, and like that just adds another dimension to like not only is Pascal doing that kind of stuff, and Aaron Nesmith, and like we're hitting shots like that. Then you sub out Pascal, and you're bringing a bench guy that can also do all that stuff. It's like okay, well this is like it's never gonna stop. It goes back to what. Lincoln was talking about with how we're just not going to stop, and that applies to when our stars are on the bench, and we bring in three or four bench guys. We're still going to play the same way, and Obi's a big part of that to me.
Lincoln, in terms of OKC, who do you kind of expect for their X factor to be?
I think this is a bit of a cop out, but I would say that whichever of Isaiah Joe or Wiggins gets the most minutes, because I think they're probably going to tighten the rotation a little bit.
Yeah.
And one of those guys is going to have to hit some shots that, again, if they win, their fans are going to be like, those three threes from Isaiah Joe, or those three threes from Andrew, or not Andrew Wiggins,
Aaron.
Aaron Wiggins. Wow, I just blanked on his name so bad. Those three threes, like we will remember those for forever. And again, I think that makes them the ultimate X factor. Like at the end of the day, stars win these big elimination games, but a lot of the time defenses basically sell out on the star. And so I do think we might see a pretty interesting mix from the Pacers. I think they're going to do a lot of like speaking of X factors for the Pacers. Like Nimhard, depending on what he is able to do on offense and defense, like he could be one of our huge X factors. But part of what I think it matters to them is like J-Dub and Shea are probably going to be at a certain level. But if they're doing it by themselves, I mean, I think we all feel pretty good about our chances. And so to me, it really is. And I'll throw Dort in that mix. Like a Dort in game 6, I was so happy when he was shooting. He was shooting contested threes, he was shooting off of movement, and I was not scared of any of them. The 5 games preceding that, it felt like he literally didn't miss.
Yeah.
And so if we get a game like game 6 for some of their role players, which I know it's home, I know it's different, but I really do think that's the biggest X factor is just can they generate enough threes and can they knock them down? Because I think our defense has done a really good job of not even letting them generate threes. Like that's kind of we're winning the battle before it even starts by sure they can shoot 40% on them, but they're not shooting enough for it to actually matter. So I think that's ultimately what it's going to come down to is their shooting, which I know that's such a cop out to be like, if they hit shots, they might win. But I do think game 7s can be that simple. It's crazy.
No, I think I would agree with you, especially about Nimhard kind of being the Pacers X factor to a certain degree. I feel like he's kind of been the X factor the entirety of the series, and probably a little bit under the radar, but could maybe get a Finals MVP vote if you wanted to give it to him just because of what he's done to Shea in this
Yeah.
series defensively. I mean, you could probably look across anybody else in the NBA and say that Andrew Nembhard guards Shea Gilgeous-Alexander the best of anybody in the league. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the type of pressure he's put on him in this series. I mean, and
Yeah.
it seems like you're like over exaggerating, but you're not. I mean, he's just taking that step defensively. And the person I'm kind of interested to see for OKC myself is Chet Holmgren. I feel like
Yeah.
Chet has been so up and down this series and really good defensively, terrible offensively. But like, if he gets a couple threes to go, like you guys were mentioning that earlier, it's like could he be an X factor for OKC? The Wiggins and Joe stuff, I think it's very good. I'm not overly concerned about those guys because I wonder how much minutes they actually play in a game 7.
Yeah.
But
True.
I would say Chet to me is the one that kind of stands out the most, and then obviously Caruso, a guy who's already put up 2 20-point games against the Pacers, and they've won those games, maybe 3 at this point actually. When he scores 20 points or more, they win. So he's been
Yeah.
just like a difference maker for him. But Carson, the guy that I also think for Indiana that could be a difference maker if he makes shots is Miles Turner. And we talked about this earlier in this podcast. Me and Facci talked about it, and I said, look, if Miles happens to go 5 for 7 from three, like Facci was like, you'll probably forget about all the bad games that he had in this series. What does he need to do differently from what you're seeing from him to, get himself in better position to be more than just a 1 of 9 scorer like he was in a game 6, where the only shot he made was a wide open dunk from a Nimhard pass?
Yeah, I think he's got to make quicker decisions. I think when he is catching these passes from Tyrese on whether it's a pitch action, a ball reversal, a pump fake, and a drive and a kick, whatever it is, he needs to be lightning quick in making a decision of saying, I know where the closest defender is. I know who it is, whether it's Chet or Hartenstein. I'm either going to take this three or I'm going to put the ball on the floor and go to the basket, or I'm going to put the ball on the floor and do a little dribble handoff. I think when Miles is decisive, that really, really opens up so much for our offense. And with that, obviously, is confidence. When he's constantly second guessing himself, the thing that kills me the most is when Tyrese will, and I brought this play up, I think last time I was on, but Tyrese gets a guy up in the air, has a chance for a decent look, but then swings it over to Miles because it is the better basketball play. But then Miles, his psyche is clearly, he has not had the confidence that we might see at times from Miles. And so, and then part of that might be health stuff. We don't know what all is going on, but that being said, if he can make really quick decisions, I was going to say in terms of X factor, I feel like it could come down to just like whichever team's like third best player this game plays the best.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a funny way of thinking about that. But with this Pacers team, like you never know who it's going to be. It could be Andrew Nembhard, it could be Obi Toppin, it could be Benedict Mather, and it could be whomever. You never really know. It could be Aaron Nesmith.
Yeah.
But for the Thunder, similar, but not necessarily as much. Generally, Shea's going to be their best player. J-Dub's going to be their second best player. And then from them, in the regular season, typically it's Chet because of his versatility. But is it going to be Caruso? But I think for them, with that matchup, between Miles and Chet. It really could come down to who is able to make shots. And the thing that is fun about this Pacers team, but also kind of hurts, is that like we have certain guys that when they make shots, it gets other guys going. And sometimes in to me that like in the moment when a team's going on a big run, both for whether you're the one going on the run or it's the other team going on the run, timing of baskets matters so much. And there's times where certain guys on the Pacers score timely baskets and it feels like we're surviving, but it feels like a lot of times Miles makes baskets when it feels like we're thriving. And so when he is able to get those looks to fall, it really changes the dynamic and it gets other guys going. I think every guy on this team respects the fact of what Miles has gone through with his career in this with the Pacers over the course of these 10 years on the trade block, off the trade block. Um, all these people's gripes. I think him having a big game could be huge and really, really energize the rest of the group, which is what we'll need when we're going into OKC.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think with Miles, what's kind of got lost in this entire series is how good he's been defensively. And I know Link was talking about, Andrew and Pascal have really covered up, but like just think about how many times Miles has been involved in pick and roll coverage with SGA and J-Dub and just his ability to kind of, they're doing that every possession. So it's like you're not going to win every battle, but he's been so good at kind of shading and doing the right things. And obviously his defense on Chet has been incredible. And I want to see more from Miles, but it's also like you got to just ride it out. I think no matter what, because there's part of me that's like, yeah, if he's not going offensively early, maybe do you pull him out and put Obi in early? And it's kind of like yes and no. Like Obi is such a drop off defensively for Miles, and I think people kind of forget just how impactful Miles is. But David, I want to go to you here quickly because Lincoln kind of already gave us his prediction for Game 7. He said Pacers are going to win this one, which I'm happy he did that at the beginning of the podcast because it got me all excited. But I'm curious, what is your prediction for Game 7?
I mean, I'm not gonna come on a Pacers podcast and say the Thunder are gonna win Game 7. Let's go, So I mean, I think that I've got there's every reason to believe. Here's the thing, and I think that if you're a Thunder fan, then they should feel the same way. Like, oh, you know what? We don't lose two in a row. We're at home. Historically great season for this, that, or the other reason. So I don't think it's gonna be a blowout. I don't think it's gonna be like the Knicks game 7 from last season. It could be, sure.
Please, Lord, that'd be amazing.
That would be just it would have a stress-free night at the for
Hey,
us
Tom.
at Gamebridge.
Hey,
Well,
Tom.
I meant for us. We're going to be at
Oh.
Gamebridge watching the game. A stress-free night. We just blow it open in the first quarter. But I think that there's a reason why you said that the gap was 7 points roughly, and there's a reason why that's a consistent. Why that average has not been widened or whatever. This is their trends for a reason, and I think it's going to be a pretty close game. And I think that if you're a Pacers fan, you know as well as any of us do here that we succeed in close games more often than not. Only been 2 times this playoffs out of I think it's 10 where they've had clutch games, and I think we're 8-2, something like that. It's high, whatever it is. I could be wrong, but I believe last I remember it was 8-2, and make it 9-2. Let's go. Why not?
Yeah, I'll get to you here in a second, Carson. I just want to say we were talking about the Great White Hope earlier, T.J. McConnell. You talked about being at home for OKC. I mean, let's talk about the Great White Hope and that fan base. My God, I don't think I've seen anybody but white people there, and the only jersey they have retired is Nick Collison. So it's like, what are we doing? It's like I'm just saying. I'm like this fan base is probably one of the most crybaby fan bases I've ever seen on social media. And Knicks fans are the delusional, right? And Bucks fans are just salty. I get both sides, but it's just every Thunder fan that I've seen on Twitter, they're just like, "Oh yeah, foul merchant, foul merchant." Like, "Oh, he's a foul merchant." I'm like, okay, that's all you're saying. No one from Indiana is really complaining that much about Shea's fouls. I feel like they've just been more about Dort's no calls and Caruso's no calls and the inconsistency. And then the way they responded in Game 6, crybabying about every single call that didn't go their way. It's like all that Indiana was doing was playing just as physical as OKC's been playing this entire series, and they didn't call it. And so I'm just like, okay, I'm sorry for the race comment there with them just being the Great White Hope, but I mean seriously, the only person they show as a celebrity there is Adam Silver and a former offensive lineman from Oklahoma Sooner, baby. What are we doing? I mean, It's just like, okay, they want to act like they have a better fan base than Indiana. Come on now. Indiana's got a much, much better fan base. And let's be honest, that post game video that the Pacers showed about how great the fans are, I know people from like Deer District and stuff are like, oh, the Bucks crowd was much, much more energetic outside the arena. Should I remind you, there was no outdoor watch party as well. This was just fans leaving the arena. So, and
Yeah.
that's just one side of the street. You're not even talking about the ones that went out on Delaware Street. Anyway, I'm getting a little worked up here this late at night about stupid stuff. That does not matter. But Carson, curious your prediction for this game.
I'll give you the prediction in a second, but all I'm going to say is that one of the fan bases needs noisemakers to be considered one of the best home arenas in the NBA, and one of them does not. So that's all I'll say there.
Mm.
As for my prediction, I am also going to go Indiana Pacers in 7. I think totally agree with David. I just think that when you come down to these games, the way that you approach them matters. And we have not seen the Oklahoma City Thunder approach a basketball game with the heart and the soul that the Pacers do. It feels like there really is no heart and soul to this OKC team at times. They are insanely
But
talented.
there is at Phil Daigle's church.
Hey, there we go. What a shout out. First the Taylor Swift reference, then whatever there.
Yeah.
But anyway, um, man, I forget the point that I was making.
No heart and
yes,
soul.
Yes, the heart and soul of the OKC Thunder. The thing about the Pacers is that it feels like the Pacers do have, like, there are multiple heart and souls to this team. I remember a while back on your podcast, you talked about, is TJ the heart and soul of this team? And you say, no, it's Tyrese. But I think really, like, the answer is that, like, some nights it's Tyrese, some nights it's TJ, some nights it's Pascal, other nights it's Miles. And so you never know who it's going to be. And I could see this being a game where, like, we see certain guys roll out. You saw the way that the Pacers fans and the Pacers team rallied around Andrew Nemhard last year when Bobby Portis got all up in his grill. And I think Rick, or maybe it was Jenny, I don't know. After all that happened, they kind of pulled him out of the game just to let him calm down, because it was pretty dramatic being there in the building. But they put him back in, and he just started, like, really going at guys on the Bucks, and that got guys on the Pacers going. And I just don't necessarily, like, for me, when I see the Thunder play, it seems like their heart and soul is their fans, and maybe that's why they win the game. Maybe the home court advantage is just too big for them. But it's like, to me, you want that to be your players and not to be because Aaron Wiggins hits a corner three. I want my life force into this game to come from my players making plays, like my best players making plays, as opposed to just like random one-off dudes who, are like, we've earlier in the podcast we're talking about, like, is Isaiah Joe or Aaron Wiggins, are they even going to play in this game? And whereas with the Pacers, you know what you're going to get, you know how these guys are going to approach it. And there's no guarantee that the Pacers will ever even sniff the finals again. It feels like people are already like, OKC will be back regardless. And you can kind of take that discussion a number of ways. But with the Pacers, it's like, why not us? We might not ever be here again, but they're a team with championship aspirations who's been slept on all season. I think that if they get to a point in this game where they can smell blood in the water and that they can sense victory, I think that is really dangerous for OKC. And so I think OKC is playing a really dangerous game if they come out and really ever let this to be a game.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that it's going to be really interesting to see how this all plays out. It's going to be fun, number one. But number two, everybody's kind of writing off Indiana as maybe a potential dynasty. I don't understand why they're already writing them off so quickly, because they are still so young with Tyrese at the helm. Now their dynasty might look a little different because they might not have Pascal for the next whatever, but even the next 3 years, like, they could still be very competitive. And I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking about this team in the finals next year, just because of how the East looks. But Lincoln, I did skip over you there because we were talking predictions. You already gave yours. The one person I did want to talk about, Carson briefly mentioned Ben Mathurin earlier, and I will just say this. His game 3 was unbelievable. 9 of 12, 27 points in 22 minutes. Since then, 4 of 19 from the field. Not playing great offensive basketball, and that's his strength. Defensively, he's kind of been all over the place, and Carlisle has really shortened his minutes with him. What are your expectations for Ben Mathurin in a Game 7 And does it feel like he's almost due for one after having three straight bad games?
Yeah, I mean, I think I felt like I jinxed him. This was actually really funny. So during game four, right before he missed all those free throws in the clutch, he knocked down a couple free throws. And Taylor and I, missing free throws is something that, like, as a newer basketball fan, just drives her crazy because she's like, why don't we should hit all of these basically. And so I was saying, like, one thing I love about Ben is that's not like fake bravado confidence. Like when he was drafted and he said like LeBron needs to prove that he's better than me, like he genuinely meant that. And you can tell by the way he carries himself, the way he plays in big games. And I feel like I jinxed him because since then it has felt like he has not been confident. And I really think like some of the comments he had going into game six were exactly what you want to hear. Like he literally said, I'm not saying I'm going to score 40, but I'm going to hit the deck a little, a little bit harder, a little bit faster. Like I'm going to do everything that needs to win. And I do think we have a 6 or 7 minute Benedict stretch in game seven where it's just like he's getting, rebounds that somebody his size shouldn't get. He's having really good cuts. Maybe he knocks down like 1 3. Just these little moments that, we look back and we're like, oh, he had 7 points and 4 rebounds or something like that. But in that stretch, he carried the team. That's kind of what I'm expecting. I want to see a stretch where he kind of can prove that his confidence isn't misplaced. Because I mean, we all know how confident he is, but I do think that is what we need from him. We need one of those moments where it's like he's not going to be nervous like a normal young guy would. And again, that doesn't mean scoring 27 points off the bench. Like I think 1 8 minute or sorry, 8 point burst in a few like in a stint can completely flip the game. And so I
Hmm.
just want something like that from him. And maybe that's all we get. Maybe just that one stint that's memorable that, can turn the tide. But yeah, I don't think we need to come into the game thinking like, let's get him 20 points. Because I think that's a little bit of a fool's errand. But yeah, just give us one of those really good stints where he genuinely does tilt the game in like a very short order just because he is so aggressive and so athletically dominant. Like there's nobody that on our team is as good of an athlete as him. And that is one of those things when he gets his downhill game going, be it on cuts or drives, he really can kind of flip the script on them.
Yeah, and I will say this too, like if OKC does make any adjustments to like TJ McConnell and or Obi Toppin,
Mhm.
how does that open up windows for Mathurin to get more scoring opportunities? I think that's something just to really keep an eye on there as well, because that's what makes this team so interesting. Is like their bench unit has been kind of up and down. It feels like throughout the postseason, where I'm like, I don't really like these fits, and then all of a sudden they have these big games, and I think they can do it. I just think. You still need your stars to show up, your starters to play better. But in those stretches, like you're mentioning, I think that's really key here. So, in 90 seconds or less, I'm going to go around the horn. You each have 90 seconds. Closing thoughts on this podcast for Game 7. We'll start with you, David. Go to Lincoln. Close out with Carson.
All right. I just want to say, any fan listening, for one, like, there's good reason to have hope. But honestly, no matter what way it goes, I think that we need to, as fans, sure, if we lose, national media may not remember, every one of these Tyrese buzzer beaters, the Pascal dunk, and all these different things. But these need to be classic, all-time Pacer moments that need to live on the same way, maybe not to the infamy that 8.9 seconds, but in that same class. There's been maybe 7 or 8 moments in this playoff series that we need to pass down to our kids, for lack of a better term, and any new fans. This needs to be a part of like the. Where do what do I watch? I'm a new Pacers fan. What should I go check out to see some of their history? This, whether win or lose, this has been the best NBA season for the Pacers ever. And it's gonna be hard not to be upset, obviously, if they lose. But like nothing, even loss, this is the best NBA season in Pacers history. And I really seriously don't want to take that for granted, and don't want to take for granted the fact that like if anybody listening to this back when we were 10 and 15 thought we were gonna be in a win, or a game to win the finals, you're lying if you thought this is where we're gonna end up, right? So keep that in perspective, and like love every moment of this, because it may never come back again. We can talk about that later. There's reasons to have faith, that we could come back next year. But like you never know. And we're here now. So like please like keep this playoff run alive for decades.
Lincoln?
Yeah, I'm going to go to a quote from Bill Russell from, I think, an NBA TV documentary that he did with Bill Simmons, where they did an interview together, where they talked about a not very good Celtics team won a game 7 against, I think, maybe the Lakers. And his quote was, I told the guys, they can probably beat us in a basketball game tonight, but we're not playing a basketball game. We're having a track meet. And that's what I want from tomorrow. If we go down playing our game, doing what we do, even in a loss, I'll be happy. But I think that is the key. And yeah, I mean, to echo David's point, like, I think truly this is a run that I will never forget. I literally even now reminisce through. And Alex, just I want to thank you to have these episodes to go back and listen to my psyche and even just think like having my thoughts recorded somewhere. I'm like, I will listen to these forever, truly. And so I want to thank you for that. But yeah, I mean, truly tomorrow, like, I'm gonna go to church, I'm gonna get my brunch in, I'm gonna then spend the next 9 hours unbelievably stressed, sweating bullets, and I hope at the end of it I'm happy. But if not, this was still, again, one of the most incredible few months of sports I've ever had in my life. And I am so grateful to this team and have been so impressed with them at every turn.
Carson?
Yeah, I mean it's tough to follow those. What hasn't been said. I want to reiterate what David mentioned about don't take this for granted. And part of not taking this for granted is going to be this offseason, win or lose, especially lose. There's going to be hard conversations that are going to be, does this guy deserve this money? Do we need to move this guy for this guy? What do we do with draft picks? What do we do with this? I just want to say, with all of that, don't underestimate and like say we fall short and we don't do anything and run it back and then we come next year and you're like, oh man, this guy's still doing this guy's still doing this, TJ's killing us here, Obi's killing us here, Mathan's killing us here. Like, don't like we how many times did we feel that way this season? We've are off of two really magical runs. Last year was also a magical run, not nearly to the extent of this, but it was also a special run and is a big reason why we're where we are right now. And the thing about this team is that they are built for the playoffs. They are not built for the regular season. And so when the playoffs roll around in April basketball, May basketball, June basketball comes around, things change. And we are a tough team to beat 4 times in a row when we have Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam on the floor, surrounded by the heart of this group. And when you're playing with the passion and the zeal that these guys come to play with. So don't take any of it for granted. Like David said, may never see it again. And so just soak it all in and don't put the cart before the horse and think about like if we don't get over the hump, oh, like what do we got to change? What do we got to do? Like keep this same passion going into next season. I think one of my favorite parts of this season has been seeing people who have never given a rat's behind about basketball in their life, and they are posting all over their Instagram stories. And it's like, especially David and Alex, they're like, we've been in these trenches for 20, 30 years. And y'all are just now, like, y'all are the ones posting on your Instagram stories. Like you've been here, like, but I don't want people to stop doing that. I want to see people get behind this organization, and I want to see the city rally behind this group of guys because win or lose, this is a special group and a special thing to witness as a fan.
Well, I want to just say first and foremost, thank you guys for all of your times coming on this podcast and bailing me out to, go and find other guests, track people down. It's been easy just to say, hey, you guys want to come on and record. And I really do enjoy our conversations. I think they're pretty transparent. I think that we have different ideas. A lot of times I think we agree on some of the same stuff too, which does make the conversation a little bit easier to have. But I also think that there's things we don't agree on, and it does make it for some good conversations that back and forth. And I know we didn't do it a ton throughout the regular season, but through the postseason, it's kind of been a staple that I've looked forward to doing, just chatting with you guys, and it's been a lot of fun. So hopefully for all of our listeners, you guys have enjoyed the 4-man conversation that we've had there on the group chat, and of course the interactions you guys, especially Carson and David, have put in over at Chat BCC, interacting with fans and things like that. I know David posted a video today of how to keep your little wristbands alive and ways you can kind of hack them. So make sure you guys check that out as well. But it's been a lot of fun, and I think we're all in agreement here. Pacers in 7. It was electric hearing the entire crowd chant "Sirs in 7" as the game was coming to an end, and I'm assuming that's what's going to happen in Gainbridge Fieldhouse for the watch party if the Pacers do win this. So it'll be a lot of fun, and this has been a lot of fun. And Pacer Nation, hopefully you guys enjoyed this podcast, one me and Fachi did as well. But just get ready. Tonight's going to be a blast. Soak it all in. Embrace every emotion that you feel, and don't forget it, because these are rare opportunities to see a Game 7 with your team on, having a chance to win this entire championship. So it's been surreal. It's been fun, but we'll be back tomorrow to recap the game. So that's going to be exciting. And God only knows the pep in the step that the Facho man's going to have if the Pacers win the championship. And I think that the speakers might break on my computer when I talk with him. But I'm hoping for that because I will be smiling through all the pain. But with that being said, Pacer Nation, we love you guys. Hopefully you guys enjoy Game 7, and we'll talk soon. Peace out, Pacer Nation.